Welcome to Films from the Phantom Zone, the podcast where we talk about failed and forgotten comic book movies. I am one of your hosts, Arnaldo, and with me as always is...
Berto, the other host.
And Sable.
Nope, she's not here. Don't listen to her, you guys. Okay, moving on. We talk about failed and forgotten comic book movies, how we decide rule number 1, it must be a comic book superhero film. Rule number 2, to determine what's a failed franchise, it must be out of business, so they're not making any more of them. And rule number 3, if it put itself out of business, as in it said, we're done making movies, we made the movie we wanted to make, that's fine, and that's considered a success, as long as it made some money and it was, people liked it. Otherwise, it's considered a failure. You on board?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
But I mean, if you don't know these rules already, are you even listening to us?
Well, I thought it'd just be a good thing up top to just kind of remind people. No, you're not involved.
Hi everyone. I was thinking, it just is a little repetitive.
We're getting criticism.
Wow. Real-time criticism. You can't buy that kind of feedback.
Yeah.
Okay, butt out.
Okay.
We have a small space here, so we've got Sable, my wife, painting over there.
You're not
invited. You're not part of it.
You didn't watch the movie.
You didn't watch the movie. You have no idea what we're talking about. Okay. What movie are we talking about, Berto?
We are talking about Kick-Ass.
We're talking about Kick-Ass, movie by...
Matthew Vaughn?
Matthew Vaughn, thank you. Comic book by Mark Millar. And Mark Millar's made a bunch of comic books. Some of them are on our list, so we will come back to him for sure. And we're going to come back to Matthew Vaughn as well. But this is Kick-Ass.
This is Kick-Ass. And this is one of the few movies on this list that I actually consider to be pretty damn good.
I really liked it. It was one of those where I had to remind myself to write down what was happening, take notes, because I was having a lot of fun watching it.
Same thing happened
it
to me.
really it's one of those that takes your full attention, which is nice.
Exactly.
So if you guys want to watch this movie, it is not available anywhere. We checked. You have to rent it.
Buy it.
Just rent it. Honestly,
This is one that's worth having.
Yeah. I get annoyed, sidebar, when people don't want to rent movies anymore, because back in the day we used to go to Blockbuster. I used to go to Blockbuster with my dad every weekend. At Blockbuster, a rental was $5.99.
Yeah.
It wasn't cheap. And that was then. That was in the late 90s.
Well, and after Blockbuster I guess was still around, but then Netflix came out and you would rent DVDs through Netflix and you'd wait for them to arrive in the mail.
Yeah, but the monthly rate was still it was $15 or something like that. It was pretty pricey.
Yeah.
So just rent it. Honestly, for $2.99, it's definitely worth renting. This was a good time.
And if I know any of you in person, I will loan you the movie. I have the Blu-ray.
Do you remember a time when you hadn't seen this movie? Do you remember when it came out?
2010. I was in high school still.
Was this prime for you?
Yeah, probably.
Me too. Yeah, I was 21. I did the math. So I was a college kid. This movie comes out, and it's hey, do you like comic books? Here's a comic book-ish movie that's rated R. That hadn't been done yet. This broke that barrier, I think.
I was 7. This is actually the first R-rated movie I saw in theaters. I was 17.
Oh my god, that's so cute. Wow.
I know, right?
Shut up over there.
Please keep all this in.
Honestly, there's no way I can edit this out when you say "wow" as he's talking.
Wow.
I didn't say it as he was talking.
Yes, you did. That's staying in. I would have been in college, and I remember me and all my fraternity buddies. We went to see this. That age group at that time, what could speak to you more than saying here's a rated R comic book movie? I think this was one of those first movies that they had to put signs up in the movie theater that said, "This is not for kids." This is a rated R movie. A lot of people,
even the trailers kind of made it just look like it's just a PG-13
because it's very colorful,
fun superhero movie.
Yeah, and if you look at the poster, it's colorful costumes. It looks fun. It looks like your average comic book movie, and it was not that at all, right? So
no.
Since then, obviously there was Deadpool, Logan, Joker.
Because before it was just, I think, Blade, and that was about it for R-rated.
Right. And Deadpool was kind of the big one where parents had to kind of learn who that character was. So they would learn not to take their kids to that movie, and movie theaters had to be hey, are you sure? This is not for kids.
I don't even think the people at the movie theater knew or gave a shit, because I went with my little stepbrother who was 12 at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What did he think?
He liked it, but he saw R-rated movies pretty young. So
yeah. Yeah, I don't really remember a time when I hadn't seen this movie. I just remember being in theaters, seeing it. I've only ever seen it once, so I kind of forgot everything before we saw this. I liked it in theaters. I didn't see the sequel. There's a sequel came out a few years later.
Right.
We'll get to next week. I don't know. I didn't go see it.
You
so.
just not cared? Well,
I do not remember the circumstances around which that film was released.
I'm sure when we talk about it next time.
Yeah, right. That's a conversation for next
When
week.
we see like the release date, we'll be like, oh, well, that came out around.
Yeah. So, all right, you ready to get into it?
Absolutely.
Movie starts off. There's a guy on a roof in a suit. Do you remember this?
I do, and the scene sets the tone for the movie like perfectly.
Yeah, if anything, it really does.
We see the guy on the rooftop wearing a superhero costume.
He has wings.
He has wings. It looks like he's about to just like dive off the building and fly.
Yeah.
And this is all while the main character's talking, so it kind of leads you to believe that that's him.
Right. He jumps off. Everyone's looking at him. They start kind of like clapping and cheering.
And there's heroic music playing.
There's music, yeah. And then he just kind of crashes into a taxi cab.
Kind of like our musical intro.
Dies, yeah. Yeah. No, for sure.
And then we get the narration who's like, oh, by the way, that's not me. That's some Armenian guy with a case of mental health issues.
Yeah. Like you were saying, that pretty much encapsulates the feeling of this movie. Where it's like, hey, do you know comic book superheroes? Like, yeah, this guy died. This isn't that story.
It's kind of telling you, like, hey, being a superhero in real life won't work.
Right. The thing I liked least about that scene is that later on it doesn't come back to it. I thought maybe by the end of the movie they would just kind of like touch back off.
It was kind of like an isolated thing.
Yeah, it was just kind of like this one-off thing. It was almost like a cutaway.
It was like it was almost like a cutaway gag, but at the beginning of the movie,
it does set up the themes very well. It sets up kind of the feeling of this movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Kind of what it's about. In that sense, it works really well, I thought. There's also this voiceover because in comic books, there's like a narrator. And a lot of times a narrator, so instead of a thought bubble, it's a square.
It's like a yellow square.
Yeah, it's a yellow square. Sometimes it's a third-person narrator, or sometimes it's the actual character. But that's very common. Even in characters that are not very, like, talkative, like Batman.
Like an inner monologue almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so in these movies, when they try to translate it to film, I feel like that question comes up of, do we need to do a voiceover narration? And I think, no, you never need to do a voiceover, like, generally. I think those are cheap. I think you can show what you want the person to be thinking, but Spider-Man specifically does it pretty well in that Tobey Maguire starts off by narrating. He doesn't do it the whole movie. He just does it at the very beginning.
Right.
And then at the very end.
It's almost like a comic book page with those squares.
Exactly. It's almost like an homage to comic books where it's like, Spider-Man narrates his own stories in comics. And this is a comic book movie. However, the movie doesn't need that. We can work that into dialogue, or we can show you what the character's thinking. And this movie does a lot of that, where
this movie does it pretty well,
It does it very well. Yeah, no, Matthew Vaughn really understands comic books, I feel. And we'll get to other movies that he's done, but where you can narrate, but it's not over expository.
It's not like Sex in the City.
It's a funny thing to bring up, but for sure.
You know what I'm talking about, though? Like the narration that they do throughout that.
No. Right, because I watched a good chunk of Sex in the City because my wife would put it on. What do you have to say?
Okay, so Sex in the City, did you watch the full show?
No, not the full show.
The first season's like all narration and shit. Like, it's not good. She looks at the camera and talks to the camera.
She breaks the fourth wall?
Yes, she breaks the fourth wall.
I don't remember that.
It's super uncomfortable and weird, and I feel like that's only the first few episodes. As the show goes on, it's less and less of that.
Well, the problem with that is it's like a Band-Aid over bad exposition. So, like, if the story itself isn't telling you where the story is going, then someone needs to get on the microphone and say, and this is the part where blah, 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 blah.
But it's about her life.
Shut up. Okay.
Okay, for the record, people, he doesn't talk to me like this in person. He's just trying to be cool on his podcast, so...
Oh, we tell each other to shut up all the time.
I tell you to shut up all the time.
All right.
In real life, you tell me to
shut up. This bit isn't working.
I'm not doing a bit. I'm for real. This is not a bit. Wow.
This is their life.
Okay.
I just had some insight on Sex and the City, and I had...
It's appreciated, honestly.
All right. Continue.
Okay, so I think what that scene does really well, too, is that it romanticizes superheroes and then instantly shows you the real-life consequences.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what Kick-Ass is all about.
No, that's what this whole story is about. Yeah.
This whole story is about what if in real life they were superheroes? What does that mean? When you talk about Superman and Batman, Spider-Man, Iron Man, the Avengers, whatever, that's not the real world. So these people can be like, oh, like we're going to go and fight evil, but we won't die because the story won't let us.
Plot armor.
Exactly. But in real life, if you were to go out and say, I'm going to fight crime, you'll probably die the first time.
Oh, yeah, as we'll kind of see later.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's the premise of Kick-Ass, right? So we move on 6 months prior, I think is what it said, before that guy jumped off the roof or whatever. And we have
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Who
was Quicksilver in...
He's Quicksilver in...
Age of Ultron.
Avengers Age of Ultron. Right.
And he's hanging out with his friend.
So he's in high school, and I think he looks like a baby in this.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he was the younger actor. He was the only one that was, like, age appropriate. And I appreciate that because I hate when they do, like, high school movies. They don't get actors who would fit that age.
Yeah.
And it looks bad. It's like, again,
no, he
not to
does
keep on quoting Spider-Man, but, like, in Spider-Man we have Tobey Maguire and... what's his name?
Yeah, Flash Thompson. I don't remember the guy that plays him, though. Is it Joe something?
Joe Manganiello.
Yes.
And they're both, like, in their early 30s at this point.
They do not look like they're in high school at all.
Pretending to be in high school.
I wouldn't want to fight me neither.
Yeah, right. So I appreciate that they at least all look like they're in high school.
Yeah.
And there were so many 2010 references that I'm like, there's flip phones.
Right off the bat.
Oh my
flip
God.
phones. They're talking about MySpace. They're doing the Soulja Boy dance.
Did they do Soulja Boy? I didn't see that.
They're doing, like, the crank that.
I didn't see that at all. So they're in high school, and he's still doing narration about, like, what his life is like. He mentions that he has, and I thought this was kind of funny, how he has a crush on his English teacher.
Yeah, and he's, like, fantasizing about her
her cleavage, yeah. His English teacher is maybe, like, 50 years old.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of weird, but I think that's part of the humor. I, like, appreciate it.
He's just a horny teenager,
but it's
that's all it was.
Okay, but it's one of those things that, like, if it was, like, the 60s, I'd be like, okay, cool, like, all you got is your 50-year-old English teacher who, like, leans over and her cleavage shows, and... Because he specifically says, like, oh, no, like, all I do is, like, jerk off to my English teacher's tits.
Yeah. Well, then he also said, like, it really doesn't take a lot to set me off, and then he's, like, doing, like, research, and he sees, like, an African tribeswoman that's topless, and he just starts going at it again.
Right, yeah, no, right. So that probably, right off the bat, brings us to Nudity Minute.
Almost immediately.
Right off the bat. So there's no, like, main nudity, and there's not even any man abs, which is usually what we talk about. But it does cut away to, like, a National Geographic African lady with her tits out.
Yeah.
And
I think there's a scene, like, later in the movie where it's, like, implied nudity.
There's a couple, like, raunchy scenes, but there's no, like, outright...
No full outright nudity.
It's just a National Geographic kind of situation.
Which is kind of
But again,
it's used in a funny way.
It's 2010.
Yeah.
Like, there was internet and there's porn, and he's like, oh no, like, all I do all day is jerk off to National Geographic and my English teacher's
I think
tits.
that just shows how much of a loser he is.
That was kind of the first thing that I'm like, really? Like, 2010, but whatever. It was funny. So he basically says, like, he doesn't do much. He hangs out with his friends. He's kind of like a nerd. He goes to the comic book shop after school. He jerks off a lot. He's got a crush on this girl, but she will never notice him or whatever.
You know, almost like a Peter Parker type thing going on.
Yeah, no, that's clearly the implication.
Yeah.
Peter Parker, like, he probably jerks off all day. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they can do.
No, he probably does.
That's the point, I think, that they're trying to get across.
He was a lonely teenage nerd.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, what else was he doing?
Yeah, no, seriously. So,
they're in the comic book store hanging out, and he asks, how come no one's ever tried to be a superhero?
What do his friends say? I don't remember.
His friend, I'm going to refer to him as Clark from The Office, but I know that's not his name.
Yeah.
I think his name in the movie is Marty. But, like, his friend...
What else is he in? Because
Hot Tub Time Machine.
Thank you.
Yeah, guy with the glasses from Hot Tub Time Machine.
Yeah, that guy.
His answer is, probably because it's fucking impossible, dipshit.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Evan Peters is there, and
the other friend is Evan Peters.
The other Quicksilver.
Yeah, right. So that's their kind of funny, like, serendipitous connection, is that they both played Quicksilver, I think, in the same year, right? Those movies
not
came
the
out in
same year, then very close.
They were very close. I remember...
I think they were both 2014.
Marvel hadn't quite figured out what characters belonged to what film agreement.
And Quicksilver was like a gray area.
Because Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver both serve on the Avengers a lot in the comics, but they're also X-Men. do they belong in one franchise or the other? So they could basically use them in both.
Yeah, so there's almost like a little competition, like, which Quicksilver was better?
I don't know about you, I like Aaron Taylor Johnson's better.
I did too. It was a damn shame they killed him off.
They killed him off in that
in the
first
same movie.
I have a feeling
they're going to bring
Aaron Taylor
him back.
Johnson
back.
WandaVision seems to be invoking a lot of House of M, which is a comic book run where Scarlet Witch goes crazy because someone dies. She goes crazy, and so she's so powerful that she recreates her reality.
Yeah.
And in her reality, Magneto and her and their immediate family, because Magneto's her dad, have their own island. All the Marvel superheroes are there, but in different kind of capacities. So, like, Spider-Man is super popular because that's what he's always wanted.
Okay.
And, oh, shit, I kind of forget. But the point of it is she recreates reality because she's so distraught. And that seems to be what they're doing in WandaVision.
You think they're going to bring back Quicksilver?
I think that because that's one of the things that, like, kind of haunts her is Quicksilver's death. That's her brother, you know?
Yeah.
I think they're going to bring him back for that show. And I'd be super
really
excited.
cool with that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. And I've been calling it for years. I said one day they're going to do a House of M where she goes nuts. I didn't know they were going to do it in a TV show, which is going to be great because it's more hours of content.
Yeah, more storytelling.
Yeah. But anyway, I like him better than Evan Peters' Quicksilver, which seems to be kind of like a one-note gag in those movies.
Yeah, but also
a lot of
people like the Evan Peters one better.
It's a fun little kind of scene when he's being Quicksilver and he's kind of running around.
Yeah.
He puts on like his like music and
yeah, no, he was definitely more fun. I don't think he was a better character though, if that makes sense.
No, for sure. That's what I'm saying. I think he's very one note.
Yeah.
But moving on. It's kind of fun to see both Quicksilvers together, right?
Yeah. And
Also,
they're both playing nerds.
Right. And then Aaron Taylor Johnson also plays one of the main characters in Godzilla. We saw that not like a year ago. And his girlfriend is Elizabeth Olsen.
Who plays his sister?
Plays his sister in Avengers as Scarlet Witch. So the casting for these very specific characters, I think, is funny.
Yeah.
So it's established that he is a comic book nerd. He references Superman. He references a couple other superheroes.
His friend is reading a Marvel Runaways comic while they're talking.
I figured there's a bunch of Easter eggs that I'm not going to catch.
There's a lot.
Yeah. So Mark Strong plays a bad guy. Big surprise. Mark Strong always plays a bad guy.
Mark Strong's cool, though.
I love Mark Strong. He's a great actor. But I feel like he's never not played the bad guy.
In Kingsman, he plays a good guy.
Oh, no, yeah, you're right.
He's a very
right.
lovable character in Kingsman, too.
He's awesome in Kingsman. But otherwise, he's mostly the bad guy.
Well, yeah, he's got the
He plays Sinestro. Oh, we're going to get to him back in Sinestro when we do...
He does play Sinestro.
Green Lantern.
Holy shit.
Hell yeah. Oh, I'm excited. We should do that soon. He plays a bad guy in something else, too. Not important. So we meet his son, who is...
Oh, they meet him in the comic book store.
They meet him... Right, that's the transition
okay.
I'm going for here. What's his name?
The actor's name?
Yeah, the actor. You just said it
Christopher Mintz-Plasse.
Right. That's McLovin from
McLovin
Superbad.
from Superbad.
So if you can imagine, this is like 2 years after Superbad. So they definitely casted him off of this Superbad high. That
he's got like this like
on,
dorky charm though.
Right. But again, after Superbad, they're like, there's nobody else that can play this character better, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of this misunderstood rich kid. No, he doesn't have any friends because he's super rich.
Bodyguards don't really let anyone near him.
Right.
Because Kick-Ass, should I call him Kick-Ass or Dave?
We can start calling him Kick-Ass because I'm not going to call him Dave.
All right. So Kick-Ass,
the main character that we've been
walks
talking
up
about,
to this
Kick-Ass,
kid because they see the rich kid walk into the comic book store and his friends are like, "Oh man, that's Chris D'Amico. He's the I kind of feel bad for him because he doesn't seem to have any friends. He's rich. Everything Arnaldo just said about him." So they convince Kick-Ass to go talk to him, and as he's approaching the kid, Chris looks up and smiles like he's almost happy that someone's coming to talk to him, and then his bodyguard comes up and he just goes, "Fuck off."
Yeah. So the implication is this kid doesn't have any friends.
Yeah.
Later on, we see him in like a limo, in the back of a limo, and the dad, played by Mark Strong, who is Frank D'Amico, he's the villain of this movie. I'm probably going to call him Mark Strong the whole time, is doing some gangster shit.
Yeah, he found out
someone
a lot of
stole
his
some
coke
drugs.
went missing.
Right.
And the guy's like, somebody dressed as a superhero came in, kicked all of our asses, and took it all.
Oh, that's right.
And they don't believe him.
Yeah. And so he leaves. He's like, "Oh, I got to take my kid to a movie." He gets in the back. This scene was really funny.
Yes.
Because
I wrote this in my notes too.
Yeah, you can hear him. You can hear all the gangster shit happening
Yeah,
in the
you
background.
hear the screaming, the torture, and he's just talking to his kid about like going to the movies.
Yeah, meanwhile he's like, oh,
he's like, oh, I
late
want to
for
get
the
we're late for the
movies.
movie. I'm gonna get an icy.
what about
blah,
some
blah, 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 blah.
popcorn? But the trailers, this and that.
And they're just having this conversation, but in the background you hear like screaming, torture, and then eventually you just hear a gunshot and then silence, and then they're still just talking about the movie.
Yeah.
It's
So I thought it was pretty clever.
It's a little bit of dark humor sprinkled in there, which there's actually a lot of dark humor in this movie.
Yeah, and it's one again. This is kind of what this movie is based on.
Yeah,
so
this is another scene that
good,
captures the
right.
tone perfectly.
Exactly, early on.
But I know when they go to the movies, there's a fun little Easter egg on the marquee. It says that the movie that's playing is The Spirit 2.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn.
And I think
That's
did
a
Matthew
little
Vaughn
deep.
direct
Nope.
The Spirit?
Nope, that's
Did-
Frank Miller, and that happened way later.
That's funny.
Right.
Who wrote The Spirit?
The Spirit's old. The Spirit's an old character. It's from like
It is
we
funny
we
that
talked about
it
in our
literally
movie
said
episode.
like The Spirit 2.
Yeah, no. So that's like a joke, meaning like
It's like a comic book joke.
no, I think it's a joke saying like the movie industry is just kind of like squeezing everything it can out of like the comic books,
Out of
basically,
everything,
out of
yeah.
every character that they went to go see The Spirit 2. So it cuts to we meet Nick Cage and Chloe Grace Moretz.
Oh.
So this is her debut. I don't think it's her debut, but this is like her big kind of like
This is her big break.
it's her big break. Yeah, she's quite famous now. At this time, she's like 11 years old, right?
Yeah, like literally.
Yeah, which is awesome. And she's amazing in this movie.
She rivals Nick Cage.
Yeah. And so we picked this movie because of Nick Cage, because it was the connection from this to Ghost Rider. But so they're in a random, what is it called? It's like it's a waterway.
Yeah.
Like under
under a bridge.
streets, under a bridge and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And Nick Cage is like, it's not gonna hurt, I promise. Pulls a gun on his daughter. You
Shoots
don't know.
her.
Yeah, shoots her. You don't know what they're doing,
Yeah,
and that's part
it's-
of like the like surprise or whatever.
It's like, you're going to be fine, baby doll.
Yeah, and then shoots her, and she's like, okay, Dad. Boom! Like, she gets shot in the chest, falls down. Then you realize she's wearing a bulletproof vest. And he's like, well, you need to know what it feels like.
When
if
some
you get
junky
hit."
asshole pulls a Glock.
Yeah. And so she's wearing a bulletproof vest. The bullet kind of pops right off. She's like, oh, yeah, it didn't really hurt or whatever. But I'm over here like, what if he fucking misses? Like, that is such a risk to take. And I get that he's like a professional. Like, he's really
also
good.
kind of a psycho.
Yeah. And I'm like, I get that he's a Batman type, and we're going to get to that. But holy shit, dude. Like,
This is your daughter.
yeah. And she's 11. So
She seems to be all about it, though.
right. And we'll get to it, but I feel like she's kind of also being brainwashed.
Oh, obviously. Yeah, very much so.
What happens after this?
We get to the point where
I think this is when he
Kick-Ass.
decides to be kick-ass, right?
he like orders a bunch of shit online and makes his suit basically, which looks exactly like his suit from the comic, by the way.
Yeah.
They were not
this is-
shy about that at all.
No, and they have no reason to be shy because this isn't like X-Men 2000.
Let's put them all in black leather.
Right, and that movie gets shit for it nowadays, but at the time, I think it was super smart to make their super suits kind of
Uniform.
more inviting, like give it some sort of like in-universe reason as to why it exists, you know?
Right.
Whereas in this, it's like, no, the whole point of this movie is that real people can be superheroes if they really want to.
Yeah.
And therefore go all crazy. So he gets like this green spandexy with
Is it
yellow.
like a scuba suit type
yeah.
thing?
You see him kind of buying it online. And I think it's funny because he wears it with like boots.
Yeah, like Timberland boots.
Yeah.
And then he has like a baton.
And but he doesn't have the baton originally. He gets it later. I
Oh,
think.
true. I think he has like one baton at first.
Yeah, earlier in the movie, he gets picked on by a couple like street bullies.
He gets mugged like right after he leaves the comic book store.
You get the impression that he knows these people and that they get mugged all the time by them.
Right.
They're like, oh, we don't have any money. Like, you took our money last time or whatever. So he really wants to do something about it. He feels like, he should do something about it.
Yeah,
and there's this great kind of like montage where he's trying to kind of train himself into being a superhero. And it's clearly based on Spider-Man.
Right. There's the part where he's like running across the rooftop and then he just stops.
And he's like,
oh, fuck.
Like, what the fuck? I can't jump to the other rooftop. Like, what am I doing?
He puts the kick-ass suit on underneath his school clothes and goes to school in
and
it.
he goes to school in it just in case. Because you never know when danger's gonna be afoot.
And when I saw it, that's
know?
when I was like, oh man, this guy's a fucking dork.
He's a right, and that's kind of the point because that's what Spider-Man does, and that's what Superman does,
Right.
You know, and that's what the Flash has a suit in his ring or whatever. Like they're ready to go at a moment's notice.
So he's got to be ready.
So he has to be ready to go exactly.
And he is ready when it's.
Also, he has no fucking skills. At all. Like
no,
he's a dweeb.
He's a dweeby.
He's a big
kid.
old dweeb.
Yeah.
And he tries to kind of like train himself a little bit. There is that montage, like I was saying.
He does like sit-ups.
Yeah, not a whole lot. But again, it's realistic. If I sat in my room and did sit-ups for a month, I can't go fight crime.
No,
like,
you'd be in more shape, but
yeah,
that's not going to teach
I
you
might
how
have
to fight.
abs. That's not like a good skill.
That's not training.
Right.
Yeah.
So by the time he finishes his montage, gets his costume, becomes kick-ass, he decides to like go do something. He goes and fights those two bullies.
Because he sees them like trying to like jack a car.
So he goes around the corner, he changes into his kick-ass suit, he comes back, and what happens?
He attempts to fight them and immediately gets stabbed.
He immediately gets shit kicked out of him and stabbed. I think that's kind of the point of this whole movie.
Yeah, if you attack gangsters in the street, like that's probably not going to end well for you.
No, you're going to get stabbed. Yeah. You're going to shank.
They shank him and run away, and then as he's like kind of like hobbling away,
they beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, that too. And then he gets hit by a car.
Oh, that's right. That too. Yeah.
Just the icing on top of the cake.
They throw him into like the street. He gets hit by a car.
The guy drives away,
and so he's in the ambulance, and he apparently convinces the ambulance to like hide his suit so he's not like embarrassed on top of this. So he goes into the hospital.
It'd be more embarrassing to be found naked.
Right. Once he's out of the hospital, he is like, I'm basically Wolverine now, right?
Yeah, he said his like nerve endings are all fucked up, so he like
can't feel pain.
I'm sure he can feel pain, but like,
not as
nearly as much.
Right.
Yeah.
And they put plating on like all his bones.
So his bones are a lot harder.
First of all,
he was fucked up.
You would need to have like broken every bone in your body in order to justify getting plating done.
He got stabbed, he got the shit kicked out of him, and then he got hit by a car.
We'll talk about this later, but I feel like it was kind of a break from reality because the whole premise of this movie is that it takes place in our reality.
Right.
And I feel like this is one of the instances where it breaks from that and it doesn't land as well.
I feel like it has to at certain points, though.
Sure. So it gives him a little bit of a reason to at least like have some superpowers, right?
Be able to not immediately start crying when he gets hit or something.
Right. During this time, he like is more inspired. He doesn't get excited about his teacher's cleavage anymore.
No, he's
which I thought was a funny kind of gag.
He's much more driven.
Yeah. So like right before he gets there, he says, "What does he say?"
Like every serial killer already knows, fantasizing just doesn't cut it, and you have to take action.
Right. So he can't just sit around and pretend to be a superhero anymore. Right. He has to actually do something.
You have to act on it.
Yeah, and I think it's super interesting that he compares not only himself, he compares superheroes to serial killers.
Which is like... well, serial killers are obviously psychos.
Yeah.
So is this also saying, like, anybody that would be a superhero is kind of a psycho?
Right. I think that's kind of like
it's a fun
the crux of this movie. And this whole premise.
Oh, it kind of is. Like, they're all psycho.
Do you need to be insane to do this?
You absolutely do.
Right, but does that make you heroic, or does it make you insane? I think that's the question here. It's like,
I think are you
both? Are you actually insane but perceived heroic? You know what I mean? Like, if you go out and do this, like, if I went out tomorrow and said, I'm going to go find, like, villainy.
And beat the shit out of it.
No, exactly. And... does that make me a hero, or does that make me insane?
Oh, you're probably insane.
Exactly.
Your intent is to be a hero.
So, I thought that was super interesting. Yeah. But, so he's in the hospital. Meanwhile, we get the microwave scene where the bad guys are... And I think it kind of didn't serve any purpose, this scene. It was just kind of just to be fun, I think. But they cut back to the villains.
It was a little bit more of exposition, too.
A little bit, yeah. But they cut back to the villains, and they're like... They have this new giant microwave that they can stick someone in. And they're like, all right, we'll torture this guy and get the information we need. But they don't know how it works. They don't get
anything out of him.
They don't get anything out of him. They turn the microwave on, and the guy's like, I'm about to, like, get fucked up. And they're like, where'd you get the Coke or whatever? Yeah. Who's taking the Coke? Anyway, the guy's like, I'm not comfortable. Hello.
He's, like, dying in the microwave. And then the people outside are like, can you even hear us?
They're like, no, right. and then he fucking explodes.
Yeah, and then like, oh fuck.
Like there's blood everywhere.
Well, all right, here's.
It was a fun scene,
What the
honestly.
fuck did you think was gonna happen when you put
No, the whole time, because at the beginning of the scene, they're like, "Oh, it's like a microwave." Well, what do you think's gonna happen when you put a human being in a microwave? Like you've put food in
They're
there,
gonna be superheated and they're gonna blow up.
Exactly. Surely you can imagine. You've had shit explode in your own microwave before.
But the guy puts the timer for 5 minutes.
First of all, you put nothing in the microwave for 5 minutes. That shit's not gonna be edible.
No. Yeah, because they're like, I don't know how this fucking thing works. He just puts 500 start and just shrugs.
At the very beginning, the guy's like, I'm very uncomfortable. This is not okay. And then he explodes. Blood splatters everywhere. They get no information.
It's one of the more like disgusting scenes in the movie too.
I feel like it's one of those scenes where they're like, all right, it's rated R. Like, where do we push the boundaries?
No, and
where
I'll be
can we
honest,
have fun
it
with
did make me laugh.
It's very fun. I love that scene a lot. So now, like every superhero, he did a thing, he has confidence, and he gets the girl, right? No, he doesn't get the girl. Instead, what happens, he thinks he's going to get the girl.
Yeah.
So the girl that he's been, like, kind of fawning over goes to talk to her, and she's like, oh, yeah, like, people like you, like, because he's hurt, he went to the hospital, he's still injured, he hasn't recovered yet. And she's like, I've always wanted a friend like you, blah, 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 but I've never had a gay friend before.
Everybody thinks he's gay because he was found naked after he got... I'm not sure why that means he's gay.
It's 2010, and I feel like it's not as sensitive as we would be today.
Well, even back then, I was like, how does that make him gay?
Kind of hard, but yeah, no, right. And so she assumes he's gay, and
all of a sudden he starts acting like the gay best friend.
So he's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll be the gay best friend. He's like, yeah, of course I'm gay or whatever. And so he becomes best friend with this girl that he's in love with.
Which, you're just torturing yourself, dude.
Yeah, and so they're like hanging out. They're becoming best friends.
He's giving her massages.
Right. No, at one point he's applying self-tanner on her.
Oh, that's
and she's like naked, and he's like putting tanner on his back or whatever, on her back.
Yeah.
And I don't remember where that scene goes, but
it doesn't really go anywhere. No, he's gay, remember?
Right. So now that he's healed, he goes off to be
he starts doing like jobs. He opens up a website.
Yeah, he starts on MySpace.
He's not popular yet.
He doesn't get popular yet. Yeah, so he goes and he finds like a
he's
poster
just doing
for a
good
cat.
deeds, basically.
I feel like, and again, this harkens back to Spider-Man, where Spider-Man's like a friendly neighborhood superhero. He's not doing the big stuff; he's doing the little stuff.
Right.
That's kind of Spider-Man's thing, right? He finds a poster for a lost cat. He's like, I'm gonna find this cat. He rips the poster off and runs away with it. And I'm like, that's not helpful.
And then he just kind of just walks around. Hey, have you seen this cat?
Yeah, that's not helpful at all. Statistically, more people would see it if you had left it up on the post.
Yeah,
but
take a picture of it on your flip phone.
Yeah, they have flip phones.
Show it to everyone.
We saw his flip phone. It has a camera. He goes eventually that night, finds the cat.
It's at the top of a fucking billboard.
Yeah, he climbs a billboard, gets the cat, comes back down, and then a crime is happening, right?
Well, he kind
of
makes it worse before he makes it better. Because he falls off the billboard after yelling, fuck you, Mr. Bitey.
Right.
Damn cat. And he falls down, and then somebody's running and trips over him, like, as soon as he falls. Yeah. And then all the people that are chasing him caught up to him because he accidentally tripped this man.
The man who he tripped was running away from some bad guys.
And then they all just start beating the shit out of this guy.
Yeah, and then he decides to get involved. And so he fights these bad guys. He's not very good.
No, but he's
persistent.
Yeah. And I can respect that.
I totally respect that in a fight. Like, I've never been in a fight, but he at least is, like, trying his best.
And then, like, a passerby comes by, some teenage kid, and he tells the kid to call 911. The kid nods and runs inside.
He runs into a diner, and he's like, hey, there's a guy fighting a bunch of guys. Let's go all watch.
Yeah, and then they all just stand out there and start recording him and watch, as, you know, one would, I guess.
Sure.
I mean, I guess if I heard like some dude dressed as superheroes beating someone up, I would honestly, I would absolutely be like, all right, what the hell's going on?
And record the whole thing. Like
By the way, nobody called 911.
I might have called the cops, but I'm kind of an adult now, so.
Right.
A bunch of kids that would just record.
Yeah, a bunch of kids come outside and start watching this brawl happen. Kick-Ass is a terrible fighter, but like you said, he's very persistent. He does not give up.
And for me, I'm like, this guy he just got beat the fuck up like probably a month prior.
Right.
Shouldn't he have like gotten more protection? Like some armor, like something. He's still wearing the same shit. I don't know. I feel like I would have done things very differently than he.
But he continues fighting these gangsters until they're like, you're really gonna like die for this like piece of shit that you don't even know? And then Kick-Ass brings up the point, he's like, 3 assholes laying in on one guy while everybody else watches? Yeah, I'd rather die than let you do this.
Yeah.
And then before the guy like walks away, he goes, "You're fucking crazy, kid."
Yeah. And that too, it's like we're still comparing superheroes to like psychopaths. Yeah. Like you have to be crazy to want to do this.
Well, yeah, because this is not a normal thing that anybody would do. But then there's like this.
I love that at one point one of them says, "What the fuck are you supposed to be? The green condom?" And I'm like, I giggled way too much. That was like the line of the whole movie. But like, what the fuck is your plan, you know?
When you do it, like,
yeah. But so
this scene is actually kind of like inspiring in a way though. Because the guy like he asks if the guy's okay, and the guy is just like, "Oh my god, like thank you."
Yeah, he definitely does the right thing. He saves the guy. He ends up beating up the other guys. I think cops show up. He runs away. And then all that footage that people were recording on their very low-res camera phones gets uploaded to MySpace. Yeah. And then we have the montage where it's like on the news.
Yeah. And this is also where he comes up, like where he officially calls himself Kick-Ass, because the kid recording him asks, like, who are you?
He's like, I'm Kick-Ass.
I'm Kick-Ass. Yeah. And then he goes viral.
Yeah, he goes viral. They show Craig Ferguson on the Late Late Show.
I like Kick-Ass.
And he's talking about, he's talking about Kick-Ass or whatever. And I'm watching this, I'm like, God damn, I miss Craig Ferguson so much. Because at the time, me and my mom would watch Craig Ferguson on the Late Late Show every single night. Like, that was our thing. If we missed it, we would record it. I miss him so much. He was such a talent. But that brought me back to 2010. I'm like, hell yeah, dude.
No, this
Craig
movie
Ferguson
shows its age, but like in a good way, I feel like.
Yeah, no, seriously. It's MySpace, it's 2010, it's Craig Ferguson, it's flip phones. It was awesome in that sense, yeah.
And everybody's obviously watching this on the news, including the bad guys, Frank and his family. But they're just like, oh, fucking crazy guy, like whatever. Mm-hmm. Like they don't think anything of it. And Kick-Ass isn't a threat to them yet.
Right. So then they go to... Kick-Ass is talking to, or Dave, that's his name, right?
Dave.
He's talking to the girl, and she's like, yeah, this guy is bothering me or whatever. She still thinks he's like a gay best friend or whatever.
And he's like, oh, you should message Kick-Ass.
You should, right, because at this point, Kick-Ass is like taking requests on MySpace.
Yeah, his
MySpace
he's like, page has like 1,000 friends and counting.
So I think this is funny, and again, I think it's a very Spider-Man/Superman thing, where Clark Kent or Peter Parker can't get the girl, but Superman or Spider-Man can.
And he literally says that.
And they do that. He does?
He literally says that later in the movie.
Oh, I don't remember.
He's like,
that
what's
part.
the difference between Spider-Man and Peter Parker? Spider-Man gets the girl.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Because she's interested in Kick-Ass. She's like, oh no, Kick-Ass is super hot.
He's cute.
And he's right. And he's like, oh no, but she thinks that he's her like gay best friend or whatever.
Yeah. And it's hilarious because it's the same person.
So he's like, all right, well, I'm going to go take care of this guy that's bothering her or whatever. And
and this shit goes sideways.
Right. And he goes to like this random apartment. It's clearly like a gangster's, like a drug dealer's apartment.
He's playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
Damn. Yeah, this movie shows its age so well. But like in a good way, like you said.
Yeah.
So he goes in and he's like, oh, like you don't need to bother this girl anymore. And he's like, who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here going like, what's your plan, dude? Like, you don't have superpowers. May I remind you?
He's got some serious balls here, though.
No, sure.
He's like, who the fuck are you? And he's like, I'm Kick-Ass, and I'm giving you a message.
Yeah, but I think he's relying on his social media presence at this point, and not like any skill that he has. Because I'm like, how are you going to get out of this if they decide to beat you up?
I love what he says here, though, because it's so ballsy. He's like, leave Katie alone, or I'll come back and break your fucking legs. He says this while surrounded
by, like, henchmen, yeah. No, you're right. Like, that might be, like, the best thing Kick-Ass has going for him at this point. Because he's not good at anything.
No, he's not.
And they start, like, beating him up. They start fighting him or whatever.
Well, he pulls out a taser and shoots this guy in the face with it. And all that did was piss him off. They're about to, like, basically kill him.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, this guy gets stabbed through the chest.
Basically, Hit Girl, which is Chloe Grace Moretz's character.
Yes, this little 11-year-old girl shows up.
11-year-old girl.
Calls everybody in the room a cunt.
Yeah, she's fucking awesome. She starts murdering people left and right. She's doing flips.
Yeah.
She's got swords.
She's cutting off people's legs.
It's not even a sword. It's a staff with blades on each
Yeah.
end. So it's like a double-sided lightsaber kind of situation.
Yep.
It's badass.
Yeah, it's like legs are getting chopped off.
The
people are getting
action in
stabbed.
this movie is amazing, by the way.
It is.
It's very well done. There's great music.
Oh, they're playing like a remix of the Banana Splits theme song.
Well, she's like slicing legs off.
He's like, la, 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 la.
Yeah. Oh no, it was
great.
awesome. So basically, Kick-Ass is not doing anything in this scene. Meanwhile, Hit Girl is
He's just
murdering
like in shock and
everybody left and right.
Kick-Ass just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. She's being very proficient. The last guy shows up and gets shot in the head because Big Daddy is Nick Cage's character, which is Hit Girl's dad, has a sniper across in the next
and he was
building
about
over.
to sneak up on Hit Girl and
Right. Because he's constantly training Hit Girl, as we saw earlier in the movie.
And then you hear like a little bit of that where he's like, "What did I always tell you to keep your back?" And she said, "To the wall. Sorry,
right.
Daddy."
You don't want anyone coming up to you. Exactly.
Yeah.
So she's fantastic in this movie. And I feel like this isn't Kick-Ass's movie, it's Hit Girl's movie, but it's framed...
Well, she definitely steals the show every time she's there.
Exactly. But it's framed from Kick-Ass's point of view, which I think is the way to go. Like, I think it is better.
This is where Kick-Ass first sees Big Daddy, and then Hit Girl escapes by jumping to another roof, and then Kick-Ass is like, "Oh, I can't fucking do that shit."
Oh, yeah.
And then they just...
Because he tried earlier, too, which was awesome.
And he's too scared to do it, so they leave. But he's back at his apartment.
Right. The point is,
Or
the
house.
bad guy, Frank D'Amico, Mark Strong,
Right.
assumes that...
He gets word that a bunch of his men died.
Right. He's kind of running a drug cartel here.
Right. And all these guys were involved with that.
They're his dealers.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all dead, and they assume Kick-Ass did it because Kick-Ass is getting all the attention on
And
social
that
media.
and like the last picture on somebody's phone
Was of
was a
Kick-Ass,
picture
right,
of Kick-Ass, yeah. It's not looking good for Dave.
Right. Because he's also not a good superhero
No.
because he's getting photographed all the time. And we're going to talk about Batman a lot, but like at least Batman is a mystery. Because when Batman is at a crime scene, you don't know he was there.
Right.
That's his whole
You don't have
mantra.
pictures of Batman everywhere.
You know, right. You don't have a picture of Batman looking like an idiot. Like, oh, trying to run away. You know what I mean? Like, so like Hit Girl, no one knows Hit Girl was there. No one knows Big Daddy was there.
No.
They know that Kick-Ass was there.
And Kick-Ass
that's
even
the problem.
when he fired the taser, he left his cartridge there.
Right. So
That
later
Hit
on,
Girl picked up.
exactly. So later on, Kick-Ass is in his apartment, in his house.
Yeah,
he lives with his dad because his mom had died recently
Of an aneurysm.
So
it was
random aneurysm,
nothing like dramatic.
And he basically said like nothing much changed. Like it's just me and my dad now, but everything's mostly the same.
Life goes on.
Right. And then Hit Girl and Big Daddy show up at his apartment.
Yeah, they're just in his bedroom.
In his bedroom.
I keep thinking he's like a grown ass man
No,
with an
he's not.
apartment.
He's a kid.
not.
That's
he's
the whole
a kid.
point.
He's in his bedroom. Hit Girl and Big Daddy show up in his room. They basically confront him and they're like, "Hey, idiot, you left this taser
Right.
cartridge at the scene of the crime.
You're leaving evidence behind."
They can trace this back to you.
And he's like, "Well, how'd you find me?" And they're like, "Well, like
I tracked your
IP address from your stupid
he's like,
fucking
"Oh,
Facebook page."
fuck.
Yeah. Like you're really dumb and you're really bad at this.
But they think he has potential.
Right.
I love when they first like discover Kick-Ass and Hit Girl's like, "Oh, he's not that bad. He's actually pretty good." And then Big Daddy goes, "Good at getting his ass kicked. They should call him Ass Kick instead."
Yeah.
And he does like a little Nick Cage laugh like
Yeah. And so when he meets him, he's like, "Hey, ass kick."
By the way,
He calls him that the rest of the movie.
He calls him Ass Kick and he's talking like
Adam West.
Adam West Batman.
So if you look at on our Instagram, we shared a picture of him already. But if you look at Big Daddy, if you've seen this movie, so Big Daddy is basically Batman.
Yes.
He's very proficient
Right.
at guns and sneaking around and just being a superhero with no superpowers, basically.
Right.
So like your Batman, he wears kind of this dark suit.
He has the black
with like a
cowl.
helmet with a black cowl.
No
I think they have
ears.
capes. No, because he's not literally Batman.
No.
But he has like a belt with a big D on
BD.
it for Big Daddy, and it is
Yeah.
the exact belt as like the early
Like the Batman
Batman.
utility
Yep.
belt.
But when he's wearing the suit, he's acting as Adam West as Batman.
Complete
The
with
way-
like the
yes.
speech and everything.
Yeah, the way he's talking is
Hello,
very much
ass
like
kick.
yeah, exactly.
I tracked your IP address.
Yeah.
all the pauses and
Oh,
stuff.
it's fantastic, and it's one of my favorite things about his character. It's so good.
Oh, Nick Cage is actually pretty fantastic.
At first I was like, his handlebar mustache, because he's wearing like this like Batman-esque mask where only kind of like his mouth is showing and his chin is showing, and he has a handlebar mustache, and I'm like, well, that's definitely gonna give you away, because 1 in 100 people, maybe less, have a handlebar mustache.
Right.
But later on, it's shown that like he has a regular mustache and he puts prosthetics on. It's like fake mustache.
Kind of hilarious.
No, it's fantastic. It's a great idea because, like I said, 1 in a million people have a handlebar mustache.
Right.
So it's a great way to like.
You see him
put people
applying
off
like the black like paint around his eyes.
the eye makeup.
The eye makeup,
It's really good. I really like his character. So they leave. They go back to their house, and we get to learn more about them, Big Daddy and Hit Girl. They're in kind of like their hideaway. They've got a bunch of guns on the wall.
Yeah.
They've got computers and stuff like that.
Oh, is this where Marcus?
And they introduce Marcus. So they do this really interesting. So they break away. They do a little
It's like
bit
a breakaway into like a kind of like Big Daddy's origin story, basically.
Yeah,
but in a comic.
In a comic book, it's so good how they do it. So it's like this different animation piece. Nick Cage is narrating it, but it's all animated. It's kind of comic booky.
Yeah.
And it's meant to show you the origin of Big Daddy and Hit Girl.
Basically, it was Big Daddy and this guy Marcus. They were both cops, very good cops. So Frank D'Amico has a part of the police like on his payroll.
Yeah.
And it's explained later that Big Daddy was actually offered to be on it and he refused. So he got framed as a drug dealer and got put to jail.
Yeah.
His wife basically couldn't cope with it, killed herself.
She was doing hard drugs.
Doing hard drugs and died.
So she dies while being pregnant with Hit Girl.
Yeah, and then Hit Girl was born.
They were able to save Hit Girl as she dies. Yeah. Her name is Mindy.
Mindy. And Marcus basically took care of Mindy while...
Because Nick Cage was in jail.
While Nick Cage was in jail. And then Nick Cage obviously trained while he was in jail, got out of jail. He wants to get revenge. And then he starts this whole superhero fantasy in his head.
Yeah, because he's also a comic book nerd. I think that's the implication.
And you do find out that this whole comic book thing was actually a comic book that his character made for Mindy. Because Marcus is in there reading the comic book. And he's like, you're brainwashing your kid with this shit.
Oh, yeah, that was a really good transition.
Yeah.
I thought that whole scene was really good. It was almost like Harry Potter. And
with the three brothers.
With the three brothers, which is like this animated sequence within the movie.
Really cool within the movie,
and it's such a nice kind of break to like, oh, we're in this different movie now, and then we get to come back. It's just a smart exposition tool. So that was actually an original for this movie, and Mark Millar really, really liked it. So I I feel like Mark Millar is like the anti-Alan Moore, where he makes a lot of good stuff, but he's really into also the film adaptations too.
I feel like he's really appreciative of the film adaptations of his work.
He actually went to say that like he liked the movie better than his own book.
I'll be honest, I like the movie better than the comic too.
You read it?
I read the comic after the movie came out.
Okay.
I've only read it once, but in the comic, I believe Big Daddy like wasn't like a cop or anything. He was literally just a psycho that kidnapped his daughter.
That kidnaps the girl, yeah. And in this, they make him like a very sympathetic character.
Yeah.
Because you kind of
There's more weight to his story.
And you kind of understand why he would do this, because he went to jail, wrongfully accused. Yeah. He's trying to fight like this mob boss. And he's got very good justified. Yeah, he's very good intentions. But also, like, what is he doing to this child?
Right. That's where the ethics come in. And
so Mark Millar really liked it better than his own version. Which is fair. Like, you know, when you get other people involved, you might end up with something better.
Yeah.
When you get a couple different eyes on, you know, your own material. But so yeah, I honestly feel like he's the anti-Alan Moore, like we were saying.
Alan Moore hates anybody trying to adapt anything of his.
Right. So then they cut to the bad guy, Mark Strong. He's driving around and he wants Kick-Ass, because he's assuming Kick-Ass is responsible for everything that's going on.
And he's still like in shock about it too. He's like, one guy killed all my men.
Right. So he's just driving around. He's like, we need to find Kick-Ass. He's driving around and he sees Kick-Ass just walking in
he's
front
like,
of him.
I don't fucking believe it.
Yeah. And so they follow him. They follow him into like an alley, and they decide to like beat the shit out of him, and then he kills him.
Yeah. He gets out of the car, beats the shit out of him, and shoots him.
And
the whole time his bodyguard's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing?
What are you doing? And then there's a random passerby walks by, sees him, and starts running away. Shoots that guy too.
This movie does a lot of things with like random like passerbys that like see something and then like don't do anything about it.
And I think what it's trying to do is saying, like, hey, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, Superman is not going to come save you.
Yeah.
Like, this is the real world. And if you see, like, a mob boss doing a crime, they're going to kill you.
So get the fuck out of there.
You're shit out of
Yeah.
luck. There's nothing you can do about it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? What I thought was funny about that scene was you would need to have bought the same exact stuff as Kick-Ass.
Which,
Because
apparently he just bought just online anyway.
Sure, because Kick-Ass bought that stuff online.
He was dressed exactly the
he
same
looks
way.
exactly like Kick-Ass. For a second, I'm like, is that Kick-Ass? Like, I bought into it, you know?
Yeah. And then Mark Strong just beats the shit out of him, shoots him.
Yeah.
His bodyguard takes him back to the car. They drive away. And then we cut to a scene of Katie crying. And she's like, oh, I can't believe he's dead. And you're led to believe that, like, Kick-Ass died still.
No,
But
I
she's
saw on the
talking about-
news it said, like, Kick-Ass impersonator
Oh, you don't
died.
see that till later.
Oh, okay. Well, shit.
Because
Yeah.
it cuts to her crying because she's crying about the gangster dude getting killed because she thinks that Kick-Ass might have killed him because of her request. And then Dave's like, no. Guys like Razul get caught up in shit like that.
Gotcha.
That? And then they have another, like,
Yeah.
gay best friend moment.
Right. So then they cut back to the bad guy, and then he sees on the news it's just an impersonator.
And he gets pissed.
He gets pissed off to where his son comes up. And this is the thing. His son wants
To
to
be
be
involved.
part of, like, his father's life.
Yeah.
Because that's what sons do or whatever. That's what kids do.
Right.
McLovin is like, I know how to get this guy if you want to get him. But I'm going to need this stuff. And he gives him, like...
Yeah, and you might have to, like, screw over one of your guys.
Yeah. So he gives him, like, this list of, like, things to, like, buy,
They end up
basically.
screwing over Tony. Because they're like, you might have to screw someone over like Louie. And they're like, whoa, Louie's cool. He's like, all right. And then his like right-hand man's like, what about Tony? And he's like, Tony?
Yeah, they're
he's
like,
yeah,
he
Tony.
sucks.
I hate that guy.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
a scumbag. And then
Right.
you see on the news that like someone named like Tony Romita was arrested.
The whole point is McLovin gives him a list of things to buy in order to turn him into a superhero.
Yeah.
To compete, basically, against, like, Kick-Ass. So he becomes the Red Mist, calls himself.
Who looks way cooler than Kick-Ass does.
Well, the wig is fucking ridiculous.
But like he looks more like a superhero.
Sure.
He's
so
got
he's
the
got
cape.
He's got like a cape. He's got this outfit. He's got this wig that's like black and red. He looks like real life James Wan. I don't know if you've ever seen him. James Wan has like a red like dye in his hair, and he looks like
James Wan, the
Yeah,
director?
James Wan, the director of Aquaman, and some
Insidious.
Insidious. Yeah. In real life, he's got like this red hair or whatever. So he's got this like ridiculously long wig, and he's got this like red Mustang that he's driving around, which is great because at the time I had that same car, and like I was like I very much knew all the aftermarket parts, so like
So
I
you're like,
recognized
"Ooh,
all of
yeah."
it. I'm like, I know that car, I know those parts, I know that stupid like wing door kit that he put
And
on.
and he's on the news because he took the credit for arresting his dad's like
the
henchman.
Tony, the guy that
Yeah,
like,
Tony,
was
the
fall guy.
scumbag.
Yeah.
He was one of America's most wanted, apparently.
Well, I mean, sure, like they probably all are.
Yeah. So Red Mist is on the news. He's all cool. They're all talking about him in the comic book shop, and Dave starts getting a little jealous.
Yeah, because he's like hanging out with his girlfriend. Not his girlfriend, sorry, the girl.
Yeah, and she's like, "Oh, he's kind of cute."
Right, and he's like, "Well, you know, Kick-Ass or whatever. He's pretty cool too." And so Red Mist McLovin sends him a message on his website, right?
By the way, this message showed up red on MySpace, which is not possible. I remember that when I first watched the movie. I'm like, that's not a thing.
I'm impressed because I don't remember how MySpace worked. So good for you. Yeah, so he meets up with Red Mist. Red Mist takes him on like a mission. It was all supposed to be a like a ruse or whatever.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a setup to basically capture Kick-Ass.
Exactly. So they end up back at their like hideaway, but it's on fire.
Yeah, the lumber mill.
Right, the lumber
that
mill.
the giant microwave was in.
And they didn't expect it to be on fire.
Yeah, so they're both like, well,
they're both freaking
Red
out.
Mist freaks out and runs in. He's like, "There's people in there."
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, right before this, there's a nice little scene of them just in the car chilling, and he's showing him all the stuff in the Mistmobile, and they start listening to that song "Crazy."
Oh, by what are they called? Crazy.
Yeah. They're listening to that, and they're just
one,
both
yeah.
kind of just dancing to it. It was, I don't know, it was like a nice little, almost like a bonding moment between
Yeah,
them.
no, I mean, as far as like this film goes, there's so many great moments in it.
Yeah. So that's happening, and then they get to the lumber mill. It's on fire. Red Mist freaks out and runs over there, and Kick-Ass is like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "There's people in there." Kick-Ass still doesn't know that this was supposed to be a setup for him. So
No,
Kick-Ass
right.
runs in
he's
there
an
too.
Idiot. He has no idea. Also, never run into a burning building.
Oh no, that's a terrible idea.
Like, they could have both died.
Well, yeah, they run in there
For like a million
and
reasons.
The
don't
whole
run into a
building's
building.
like collapsing
Yeah.
on them and stuff, and they're running around. They see dead bodies in there. The dead bodies of the people that were supposed to capture Kick-Ass. Because while they were on the way there, Red Mist sent them a text, and they were like ready for him to arrive.
Right.
And then that was the last we saw of them until this scene. They see the dead bodies. Red Mist sees a teddy bear on the shelf. He grabs that. That'll become important soon.
Yeah.
They're running they're running out of the building, and then it kind of goes like the last little explosion
Oh, thank
from
you.
the fire.
Yeah.
Your notes are a mess.
My notes are terrible. So they run out of the building, and I feel like they squeezed in a cool running away from like a burning,
And
an
they
explosion.
did. Like, they're both running.
And and they have the explosion, which
Yeah.
I'm like, obviously it's a
I knew
callback
exactly what you were
to-
talking about when
Yeah,
I saw
thank
that,
you
but-
so much. The bad guys all assume this is all Kick-Ass, which I think is hilarious because it makes Kick-Ass like a sort of Mr. Magoo or like a Inspector Gadget, or like
He's a bumbling oaf.
He's a bumbling idiot. He has no idea what he's doing, but he accidentally keeps on like failing upwards,
In this case, it's not a good thing for him at all, though.
No, because he keeps on getting more and more in trouble with like these gangsters or whatever.
And he hasn't done anything to them.
Right. He's not responsible for any of this. So, like you were saying, Red Mist takes the teddy bear. The teddy bear is a teddy cam. They plug it in and they find out that it was Big Daddy. Because Big Daddy is like the Batman, right? So, like, he goes in. Honestly, like, that scene might be one of the better comic book superhero scenes of all time.
It's pretty badass.
It's amazing. He's going in, he's killing guys. To me, like, as far as, like...
It's almost like
again,
Punisher-esque.
Yeah, and he's like a Batman character type
Right.
guy, right? So, like, to me, that scene rivals the warehouse scene in Batman vs. Superman.
Oh, I'd agree.
It is just some of the best Batman-esque stuff on film. Like, he goes in, he's beating people up.
He starts shooting them.
He's shooting. I mean, obviously, he's using a gun because he's not literally
He's
Batman.
not actually Batman. If Batman was the Punisher...
Yeah, right.
Right.
No, the whole scene is awesome. The only thing is, like, he knocks out all the cameras, but he doesn't realize that there's a teddy cam.
Which
He didn't
used to
see
be
that
apparently
one.
a nanny cam for Red Mist when he was a kid.
Yeah. So Red Mist sees that and he sees this is the guy we're actually after. Kick-Ass is not the guy. Kick-Ass is an idiot, basically.
And to Red Mist's credit, he's actually trying to be like, leave Kick-Ass alone. He's
No,
just a
he's
kid.
right. He's smart. Like, he's
Yeah.
like, Kick-Ass is dumb. Like, he's not responsible for any of this. This is the guy we want.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because it's like this Batman
He's
character.
like,
So
Kick-Ass is just a nerdy kid. That's literally what he said.
like Big Daddy is flying under the radar.
Right.
Oh, my favorite part from that is that when they plug in the nanny cam, both plugs go right into the daddy's asshole.
yeah.
Like, right in the butt. I'm like, I just thought that was funny.
Another thing I noticed is when they plug in the camera and it
great
pops
detail.
up on the TV, you see all the same videos. You see some videos of like a woman in a shower.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah. And it said like Nanny Cam 1 and something like that.
That's awesome.
But after they find out that it was Big Daddy, obviously they have a new target now. Marcus calls Big Daddy, lets him know. He's like, hey, they're looking for you now.
Right. So Big Daddy's aware. The next kind of big scene, Kick-Ass goes to see Katie, right? As Kick-Ass. Because I guess he's tired of the whole, like, gay best friend
Yeah,
thing.
he's feeling super confident now.
Right. So completely dressed up as Kick-Ass, shows up at her house, goes in through the window. She's like listening to music or something, so she doesn't know that he's there.
No, she's blow drying her hair.
Oh, blow drying your hair, right?
And he's
right.
like talking and you can't hear him at all.
Yeah.
He even
And
does
so,
like a little pose. He's like, hi, I'm Kick-Ass.
right, he's doing his little poses or whatever, and then by the time Katie realizes he's there,
She sprays him with like hairspray in the face or something.
yeah, and he totally gets beat up by Katie.
Yeah.
It just it goes to show like how terrible of a superhero
He's like
he is.
screaming in pain.
Yeah.
Then she starts beating him up. She grabs a baseball
the
bat. He's
worst.
like, no, wait.
So he takes his mask off. He's like, "It's me," or whatever, and she's like, "What the fuck are you doing?
Why are you dressed up as Kick-Ass?
Right, and he
because I
explains-
am Kick-Ass, and I'm also not gay.
Also, I'm not gay, right?" And then she's like, "What the fuck?" And that's the part where I'm like, Because immediately after, he just, like, kisses her.
Yeah, they start making out, and then he grabs her tits.
And he immediately goes for the tits. And I'm like, this isn't how this would go in real life, first of all, but okay. 2010.
Oh, and when he snuck into her room, that's when he said the inner monologue of, like, what's the difference between Spider-Man and Peter Parker? Spider-Man gets the girl.
Right.
And then he
happens, yeah.
totally made a fool of himself.
Right. Which Spider-Man would not have done, by the way.
No, Spider-Man's a lot smoother than that. He is the worst. All right, so at this point, Katie already knows that he's kick-ass, and they're boyfriend and girlfriend. They start hooking up, and then, like, that's all going on. You know, his life's good. He mentioned how he hasn't looked at his kick-ass account in, like, weeks.
Right, because how dedicated is he, really, that he gets a girlfriend, he's like, fuck kick-ass.
I'm sure after the fire and seeing all the dead bodies, he's kind of done with that.
No, for sure.
I think this next scene is actually where Marcus contacts Big Daddy. He's like, hey, they're looking for you now. They're not looking for kick-ass anymore. Right. I guess some camera saw you, which was the Teddy cam.
Yeah.
And then we have a scene with, like, Big Daddy and Hit Girl. They're having, like, a little father-daughter moment. Hit Girl sees something online that costs $300,000. They don't tell us what it is, but he's like, are you sure you want that? And he looks at it, it's like, ooh, that is cool. Add to shopping cart.
Yeah. But also Red Mist tricks Kick-Ass into contacting Big Daddy and
that's
Girl.
when he eventually opens up his MySpace page and sees all the messages from Red Mist. He's like, dude, contact me, emergency, blah, blah, blah.
So he contacts them. They get together. Meanwhile, Big Daddy, they're in their hideout, and they're having hot chocolate. And I love this scene because it is so
with extra
Batman.
Marshmallows.
Yeah, it is so Batman 66 when they get the, like, hit from Kick-Ass, like, oh, we need to meet up.
Oh, the hint was, like, him putting his website, like, on vacation.
Right. So they get the signal, and Big Daddy's like, oh, we need to go. And they're like,
we'll have our hot chocolate when we get back.
And that is so Adam West Batman, because they would do, like, stupid mundane things like that and then be like, there's no time for this. We need to, like, fight crime now. So
he gives him the address of where to meet. Red Mist tells Kick-Ass, like, hey, like, these gangsters want both of us dead. There's a big problem. Do you know any other superheroes that can, like, help us out?
Yeah.
And that's where Kick-Ass sends the message.
Right.
And then so Red Mist and Kick-Ass arrive at Big Daddy and Hit Girl's hideout.
Yeah.
And then this is where the third act starts, I feel like. They get to the hideout. I guess they were only expecting Kick-Ass because he opens the door and he's like, oh, ass kick. And he's like, and he looks and goes, and Red Mist. And he, like, kind of hesitates for a second, like he's not...
Oh, that's right, they show up.
...quite trusting.
And that's when he's extra being Adam West.
Yeah, and he's like, all right, come on in. He introduces himself, and he's like, Hit Girl, introduce yourself. Hit Girl, like, it's like, hi, I'm Hit Girl. Then Red Mist pulls out a gun and shoots her, like, 5 times.
Yeah.
And she falls out. She falls out the window.
Yeah.
Big Daddy's like screaming no. This whole this grand betrayal just happened.
Right. And then all the other guys show up.
All the other guys show up.
Right.
Red Mist, again to his credit, tries to like keep Kick-Ass out of it.
So because it's all of the bad guys, like all the henchmen show up and they take Kick-Ass, and Red Mist is like,
no, he's with me. He's fine.
Right. McLovin's like, he's not responsible.
Yeah.
Like he's nobody.
The response he gets is, your dad's running the show now. Like we're gonna take you to him now. So they take everybody, they leave. They
take them to their hideout. They're tied up to a couple chairs. It's Big Daddy and Kick-Ass. And they're going to torture them on live TV, basically.
And right before all this, Kick-Ass contacted Katie, and he's like, I just need to do one more Kick-Ass thing.
So she's just at her work or whatever, and
she's
she
like
sees
worried
online, here's Kick-Ass on like streaming. It's on all the major networks or whatever, and he's about to be like tortured to death.
Yeah, we don't know that yet. All they said was Kick-Ass is announcing his retirement from crime fighting, and she's all excited about it.
Right.
And then we get a nasty surprise, and the news is broadcasting this. It cuts to a live stream of all of Mark Strong's henchmen.
Yeah.
And Kick-Ass and Big Daddy.
And the guy was so fucking annoying.
He was doing like almost like Sesame Street shit. He's like, oh, K. Sometimes the K in a wood's silent, like in Knuckle Duster.
Right.
And they start punching the shit out of him.
I'm like, this guy's so fucking annoying right now. But
it worked.
The point.
It worked. He's being a total dick while they're getting tortured. it seems like Kick-Ass and Big Daddy are about to die.
Yeah.
Like, it's about to, like, light them on fire.
So they're
and
streaming
stuff.
this
He's
on the
pouring
news,
gasoline.
and they're showing Marcus and the cops. And as they're doing this, the cops are like going on their computers to like watch because the news networks are like.
The news anchor says, due to the graphic nature of this, we will not be showing the rest of the video, which is currently being live streamed on the internet.
Right. Everybody runs to their computers to like keep watching this.
Right.
Including all of Kick-Ass's friends.
Yeah. Which they don't know he's Kick-Ass.
No, they don't.
No.
Right. They're just watching whatever. But I thought it was funny that they show all the cops running to the computers instead of like find the guy, like you're cops. Like,
I think like
go
most
do
of
something.
the cops are kind of corrupt in this movie.
I guess, right? So they all run to their computer like, oh, let's
That's all
watch
happening.
this.
Like, it's looking very grim for them. You get a little inner monologue from Kick-Ass where he's like, you know, I'm never gonna see what me and Katie's kids would look like, and this is the Lost reference. I'm never gonna find out what's gonna happen on Lost.
Oh, is that?
Yeah. And then they do like a funny little thing where it's like, and if you think I survived this because I'm telling you all this right now, quit being a smartass.
Yeah.
And then he references like other movies where like the narrator's already dead and
Sin
stuff.
City, which is on our list too.
Haven't you ever seen Sin City? Or,
Right.
Yeah. After they're done like torturing them, they start pouring gasoline all over them. They're about to just like light them on fire, and then the guy holding the lighter suddenly gets shot in the head.
Yeah, and it turns out Hit Girl's there.
Enter
She's
Hit
doing
Girl.
her thing. Right.
We get a cool little like first person scene of her wearing like night vision goggles and killing everyone.
A first-person movie wouldn't necessarily work.
No.
But this is probably the best way of doing it. Where
It
they
was
keep
just
on... Yeah.
one scene and
There's smoke everywhere, and it's dark.
it was dark.
But she's wearing night vision goggles.
Yeah.
And so they keep on cutting to her in her first-person view where she can see everyone she's fighting.
And then they cut to like complete darkness, and then like people like freaking out.
Right.
Until the guys eventually light all the gasoline that was surrounding Big Daddy and Kick-Ass so they could see. So unfortunately, this means Big Daddy's now on fire.
Yeah, they light Big Daddy on fire, which is at the point where Nick Cage goes full Nick Cage.
Yes, he is screaming.
He's screaming like random words.
He's screaming. He's screaming
something.
instructions to Hit Girl, like trying to help her out.
I couldn't understand what he was saying.
He says something like he goes, "Switch to kryptonite."
What does that mean?
I guess it was like a code that they had because she knew what he was talking about, and then she switched like a strobe light and started blinding everyone.
Oh my god, this movie's so smart to have done that because as I'm watching it, I'm like, he's just going full Nick Cage.
It sounds like he's shouting nonsense, but he's actually like shouting instructions to Hit Girl.
The movie worked in full Nick Cage into its plot.
Yeah. His screaming is absolutely over the top though. But like Hit Girl's following his instructions and it's working, and then she eventually kills everyone, puts the fire out on Big Daddy. Unfortunately, not soon enough to save him.
No, he dies.
He dies from his wounds, obviously, but not before he has a few words with her. She mentions how getting shot hurt a lot more than when he did it, and then it's kind of hard to understand him because his mouth's all burnt. But he says that's because I use low velocity rounds, child.
Right.
And he goes.
Because he's on fire,
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of cute.
It was cute, and those were his last words to her.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like dramatic last words. It was literally just him loving his daughter.
Yeah. So I've written down here one of my favorite lines of the movie that is said by Kick-Ass in his voiceover. He says, "With no power comes no responsibility," except that wasn't true.
Yeah.
So that's obviously referring to Spider-Man, whose like mantra is, "With great power comes great responsibility," as in if you are a superpowered human, then you have a responsibility to use that for good.
Right.
Right. And so he's saying kind of the inverse. He's saying with no power comes no responsibility.
And he goes, but that's not true.
Except that's not true.
He feels, after all this happens, he feels responsible for Hit Girl. Which he kind of is, because she mentions how, like, if it wasn't for you, my dad would still be alive.
Right.
Because it was totally Kick-Ass's fault.
No, right.
He fucked up.
He fucked everything
fucked up
over,
real bad.
So my favorite thing about that line, with no power comes no responsibility, except that wasn't true, is that what he's saying is the inverse of Spider-Man. Like, if you're not Spider-Man, like, if you have no powers, then you're off the hook. You're not a superhero. You don't have to do anything about evil. And what he's saying is that's not true. Like, even if you're a nobody, in the face of evil, you need to do something.
You need to stand up to it.
You need to stand up and you need to do something about it. Like, that's what makes a hero a hero. Not that, like, oh, like, you're Superman or you're Spider-Man, like, you've got these powers, therefore it's easy for you. What he's saying is anybody needs to be able to do anything.
Right.
You need to do everything that you're able to do. And in this movie,
within your power.
right. And in this movie, he's a big old idiot, and he has no special abilities at all. But at the very least, he's trying his best. And I think that's kind of the point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
he's putting forth the effort. He's persistent. Right. He gives a shit.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of all it takes, right? Like, give a shit, do something.
And they go back to the hideout. Hit Girl looks at the hot chocolate. She's all sad.
Oh, yeah, the hot chocolate that they were going to say for later.
Yup.
Yeah.
Kick-Ass is in the bathroom cleaning himself. He looks at his face. He sees how fucked up he is. And something kind of comes over him, I guess. So he comes out, talks to Hit Girl a little bit. They agree that they're going to finish this.
Yeah.
And then Hit Girl says, all right, well, we just got this package here. Read up on the instruction manual because you're about to use this in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We still don't know what this object is.
And this is where the movie kind of falls apart for me a little bit, and we'll get to it. But I feel as if the whole point of this movie is that it should take place in the real world.
This is where it becomes a little bit
fantastic.
Too comic booky.
Yeah.
It is a fun third act, though.
Yeah, no, it's great. Don't get me wrong, the movie's good. I just feel the whole point of the movie is, what if superheroes existed in the real world, and then it abandons the real world into this heightened reality. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
What we get is Hit Girl attacks their base.
She kind of infiltrates it. She pretends to be a little girl, and they're like, "Oh, of course we're gonna let her in."
She's 11. Let's not forget, and the actress is 11
There's
too.
literally this 11-year-old girl that's like, "I lost my mommy and daddy. Like, I need help."
Yeah,
and they're like, "Oh, we'll help you out." And then she pulls out a fucking gun.
Right. She starts shooting everybody. Then she changes into her Hit Girl outfit with her mask and her wig or whatever. And then she goes and upstairs. She keeps on shooting other guys. She
awesome,
kills a bunch of guys.
Western music was playing during this
no,
too.
No. The scene is amazing. The third act is great. It's such good action. My point is that there's a scene where she's shooting a bunch of guys, and then she reloads her pistols by throwing her cartridges in the air
yeah,
and catching them with her gun.
This is the point where it gets almost a little too stylized.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It feels a lot like Wanted or Kingsman, and that's appropriate because Wanted and Kingsman are written by the same author as...
And Kingsman was directed by the same director.
Exactly. But those properties are based in that heightened reality, right? So Wanted, the whole premise of Wanted is that there's a secret society of people, of assassins that can do things like curve bullets. They shoot a gun, but they can shoot a gun in a certain way in which the bullet will curve, which is impossible. You cannot do that.
No, that's not a thing that happens.
Right, and that's one of the reasons I kind of didn't like that. However, that's kind of the premise of that story. And so that doesn't take place in the real world, right?
No.
And then Kingsman is also another one where it's
these super spies.
Here's these super spies have been around for a long time, and they can do things like jump off a car and land on the other side of the car.
Which is also a really fun series, by the way. So you should watch Kingsman.
Is also good, and I like those movies. However, in those movies, it's not a very realistic world either, right?
It's its own
The
world.
whole point of Kick-Ass is, what if normal people in the real world try to be superheroes?
Right.
And then it gets a little kind of fantastic at the end. And that's why I'm like, well, that kind of doesn't work. You know what I mean? The whole point is to be realistic, then be realistic.
I get what you're saying.
I would have done better without that because she reminded me a little bit of an Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible, where the whole point of that character is he's a super spy, but he's also a super spy set in the real world.
He gets the shit beat out of him all the time.
Right. He's not a superhero. He's not a James Bond type. He's a type that can speak 3 languages and can infiltrate different countries and governments, and he's got all these skills that you could reasonably learn on your own. You know what I mean? Or with training. And so I feel that's the route they should have gone with her, instead of her being able to throw 2 cartridges in the air and then
they could have made it a little more gritty and less stylized too.
Exactly. And I feel that would have worked better towards the premise of this whole story. But anyway,
we're about to get to something that's even more fantastical than that.
Exactly. There's 2 things that kind of break that for me, and it's that plus so she shoots a bunch of people.
Yep. She ends up getting pinned down.
The scene is great, don't get me wrong. It's filmed very well. The action's super great.
It's a joy to watch.
Yeah. So she shoots a bunch of people. She kills kind of their front line, their second line. She hides in his personal kitchen, in Frank D'Amico's personal kitchen. And then she's kind of cornered or whatever. And that's when we get the bazooka scene. I love this scene because...
Which they stole from Big Daddy's hideout.
Yeah. So when they kidnap them or whatever, one of the bodyguards takes a bazooka from Big Daddy.
He's like, I always wanted one of these.
Right. And then there's a scene where basically everyone's dying. All the henchmen are dying. Hit Girl's killing all of them. And the last bodyguard, the personal bodyguard to Frank D'Amico and McLovin.
Everything's under control.
He walks and he's like, it's all fine, everything's under control, and he slowly kind of scoots over, grabs a bazooka,
and then
walks back
Red
out.
Mist is like, under control, you're grabbing a fucking bazooka. The bodyguard looks at Frank D'Amico and he just goes, sir? And then he's like, it's fine, thanks. And he just walks out with the bazooka.
I thought that was hilarious. So he goes and is about to shoot
Hit Girl with the bazooka.
With a bazooka, and that's when Kick-Ass shows up.
And we find out what the thing was. Which, to be fair, they did kind of set this up earlier in the movie. But
it's a
fucking jetpack.
It's a jetpack.
With Gatling guns on it.
It's a jetpack that they installed Gatling guns on.
Yes, Big Daddy installed Gatling guns onto this
So
jetpack.
they're in like a high-rise skyscraper or whatever, and he's on the outside in a jetpack, and he throws down the Gatling guns and he starts shooting everybody. He saves the day, shoots everybody or whatever, but
he's just screaming, motherfucker!
Right. But again, it kind of breaks the realism for me because
100%
that's
breaks
ridiculous, and I'm pretty sure jetpacks, as popular as they are in different media, they're not real. Like
not to that extent.
Exactly. Like we don't have real jetpacks. We have jetpacks that we can hover around in a little bit, but not fly around. And also, if you were to attach 2 Gatling guns to a jetpack, it would definitely throw off that equilibrium instantly.
Oh, he wouldn't be hovering there. He'd be flying all over.
He'd be flailing all over the place like a pop balloon. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to me, that's the one thing where I was like, this is a little ridiculous. But
yeah.
I still forgive it.
No, I'll forgive it. It kind of breaks the whole premise of the film, I think. So,
something changed.
Yeah. It's those 2 things for me. But it is badass, and the scene is great. And so Kick-Ass shows up, and he's fighting McLovin as Red Mist.
They both charge into the room, and it's...
And here... Yeah.
It's hilarious because this 11-year-old girl goes for the main bad guy.
So the main bad guy... Right, so Frank D'Amico, Mark Strong, is fighting Hit Girl, intercut with Red Mist fighting Kick-Ass.
Right.
And I think there's a missed opportunity here, because what they should have done is shown Hit Girl, who's like this very capable fighter, fighting like the boss or whatever, and they should have intercut that with Red Mist and Kick-Ass having no idea what they're doing, like in a dumb fight.
Right, instead they kind of do like a real fight.
Yeah.
They actually start like beating the shit out of each other.
And they sort of still do it. Like they're not really fighting and they're really bad at fighting.
Good fighting, but...
And I think what's hilarious is that they're juxtaposed against a dojo, which is where Frank D'Amico's been training.
Yeah.
And they're both idiots. Like, kind of wailing at each other. But the way that they film it and the way that they cut it is still in the same... Like, the editor treated that scene as, like, a good fight.
Well, I think what they were trying to do is just make this last fight, like, a serious one.
But I think it would have been more funny and more... It would have resonated better if they had done, like, pan it out a little bit and shown, like, how terrible of a fight they're having.
I think that would have been
They're
pretty
basically
cool, too.
slapping each other.
Yeah.
While Hit Girl's having a real fight.
They're trying to kill each other.
Right. They're having a real fight, and you cut to these two just kind of like barely hitting each other and barely landing punches because they're both idiots.
Right. But instead, what we get is, like, honestly, like, just 2 kind of evenly matched morons fighting.
Right.
They kind of knock each other out, too.
Yeah.
And then, meanwhile, Hit Girl's actually kind of getting the shit kicked out of her.
Yeah, she's losing.
Turns out Frank D'Amico's a really good fighter.
Well, again,
the first thing he does is just kick her in, like, the face.
Yeah, like I was saying, like, he does train at, like, this dojo or whatever. But then Kick-Ass shows up.
With the bazooka.
At the last minute.
Because him and Red Mist knock each other out. Kick-Ass gets up first, finds the bazooka because that bodyguard that had the bazooka is obviously dead.
Yeah.
And then, like, as Hit Girl's, like, about to get killed, basically, which... Funny thing is, what Frank D'Amico says as he's about to kill her is, God, I wish I had a son like you. He kind of shit-talks his own son.
Yeah. So he shoots the bazooka, it hits Frank D'Amico, throws him outside.
He blows up.
And he blows up, yeah, and that's kind of the end of the fight.
Yep. And then
Hit Girl and Kick-Ass leave together.
Fly away on the jetpack, land on a rooftop. They have, like, a little tender, like, bonding moment. She finally tells him her real name.
Yeah. You cut back to Red Mist by himself, basically, on the building. And he has, like, a gun. Now his dad is dead. And I think it's super interesting because I don't think of this as sequel bait. I think of this as really good sequel setup. Because I haven't seen the sequel.
Right.
But Red Mist at the time of this movie is just kind of like this kid. And he kind of wants to be part of this crime family. But also, he still has this kind of fairness about him. So like he sees like Kick-Ass is innocent. We shouldn't be torturing him or
Right.
whatever. But at this point, Kick-Ass is sort of responsible. Not sort of. He killed his dad with the
Yeah.
bazooka.
So
rocket.
obviously he has like a changed view of the world now.
Exactly. And now they've created their own supervillain. And at the end of the
Which
movie,
they do mention, kind of like.
sort of, yeah.
He's
And
like,
so-
oh, a world full of superheroes, huh? As a great man once said.
Wait till they get a load of me, which is Jack Nicholson's Joker in Batman '89, which is a movie we're doing pretty soon.
Which
coming
also,
up.
like, that reference suits his character, too, because his character is also a comic book nerd.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the Easter eggs in this movie are
They're
very
so
clever.
good because in universe he would have seen Jack Nicholson as the Joker, and so that's a great line. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, I know this from somewhere, and I can't exactly place where from.
And then, like, in sort of like an epilogue type thing, you talk about how Mindy's now going to the same school as Kick-Ass. Marcus is her guardian again.
Yeah,
Kick-Ass has a girlfriend now.
the girl, right?
Yeah, well,
Katie.
yeah, they're still like
together?
dating.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
And things are basically like normal again,
Right.
until the sequel hits.
Yeah,
Obviously,
and we'll get to the sequel next week, but that's kind of the movie. Overall, I really like this movie.
I love this movie.
Honestly, it was awesome. Again, for $2.99 or whatever it costs, like go rent it, go buy it, go watch this movie. So we were talking about the book, as in the comic book, is written by Mark Millar. Mark Millar is known for a bunch of stuff. Marvel Knights Spider-Man, Ultimate Fantastic Four, Civil War. Yeah, like
he wrote the Civil War.
Yeah. Kingsman, Wanted,
Chrononauts.
Chrononauts.
Superior.
Not something I've heard of. Superior is something I've heard of.
Superior
What
is a good one.
I don't know anything about that. But, and this. And so he has a couple of movies that have been made based on his
his
stuff.
properties.
So, and a couple of which we'll get to. Kingsman. No, not Kingsman. Kingsman's still
Wanted.
ongoing. Wanted. Wanted is done. So that's on our list. And then directed by
Matthew Vaughn,
Matthew Vaughn.
who I
Let's see what
really
else he
love as a
did.
director. He did X-Men First Class,
Did the X-Men First
which is
Class,
one of my
yeah.
favorite X-Men movies, actually.
It's one of the better ones, yeah. It's not my favorite.
No, it's
but
not the best one, but it
Is
is one of the best
So
ones.
he had something to do with Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch, which were both movies by Guy Ritchie. But then directed Layer Cake. I saw it not that long ago. It's pretty good. My friend
He
made me
directed
watch it.
Stardust. I love
Stardust, which I love that movie.
Yes.
Yeah,
Starring Daredevil.
yeah, Matthew Cox. And then Kick-Ass.
Charlie Cox.
Charlie Cox. Oh, damn it. Kick-Ass, X-Men First Class, and then went on to do Kingsman, both Kingsman movies.
And the prequel coming out next
And
year.
the next one, yeah, which are all Mark Millar properties. This is the guy that a lot of people say should do the next Superman movies.
I think he'd do a good
And
job.
I see why.
He has a lot of respect for the source material.
He
That's for damn sure.
understands source material, right? He
Yeah.
understands like the comic book source material and what would make it a good movie. And a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people can't see like how to translate something from the book to film. And I
Right.
think Matthew Vaughn is one who definitely can do it. And I see where like a lot of people will criticize him because the last Kingsman movie wasn't that great. I saw that movie and I thought it was just fine.
Right. It wasn't like bad by any means, but the first one
No.
was definitely
But if you see X-Men
Better.
First Class, you get how like this man understands X-Men.
yes, absolutely.
And he says, well, let's do something, set in the 60s or whatever.
And he does a good job even making that movie kind of a period piece too.
Yeah. And I think that might have set the later X-Men movies on a bad course because then they try to make movies set in the 80s and then in the 90s and then...
Yeah.
And it kind of like falls apart.
The 80s
But
one was fine.
Days of
Actually,
Future
ooh,
Past was good.
Days of Future... No, that was in
Apocalypse,
the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah, Apocalypse takes place in the 80s. And
Okay, the
next
80s
takes
one
place
was...
in the 90s.
Apocalypse was okay.
It
I
didn't-
have not seen Dark Phoenix.
No, right,
So-
right. Me neither. And that's on our list. So this movie budget of $30 million, apparently Matthew Vaughn had to like kind of go and get a lot of this money on his own.
Oh, I think he was on record as saying like this was the most expensive indie film he's ever made.
Yeah.
This
And
was
he-
basically an indie film.
Right, and it's fairly low budget at $30 million.
Yeah.
You don't get that at all.
No
This
studio
movie-
wanted to touch this.
This movie looks like a big budget film.
It does.
It honestly looks great. It sounds great. Like, you would never think it's a low budget movie. He had to go and kind of like scrape a lot of money on his own.
Yeah.
Gross $96 million. pretty good return.
No, this movie was a success.
Especially for a rated R movie. I think this movie would do better if it came out today instead of like 10 years ago. And the reason is because
of Deadpool and all that?
No, I think
even?
it's because the whole premise of this movie, which you've said a bunch of times, is that it's about comic book heroes, right? So it's kind of a deconstruction on the comic book hero, and it works best if you've gotten a lot of these like comic book movies. And so I think at the time,
this coming out after the MCU's like peaked would be almost perfect. Yes.
So I think at 2010 they thought, well, we're currently living in the height of comic book movies, but they were wrong.
Yeah, because
right?
they were like, oh man, Iron Man came out, it was a hit.
I think it's because The Dark Knight had come out 2 years before.
Dark Knight came out,
and Dark Knight was a big deal.
One of the highest grossing comic book movies ever.
Exactly. So they thought now's kind of a good time to adapt this. And I think that's what Matthew Vaughn was thinking when he approached Mark Millar and made this movie. But this movie works for young adults, right? Because it's a rated R flick, right? At the time, who are comic book fans, right? And I think that niche of people is not that big. Whereas if you were to do something like this today,
the amount of people that would appreciate it is
much larger, because you've got kids that watch the MCU as kids are now in their 20s. Right? Because the MCU's been going for 12 years. So a kid who saw Iron Man in 2008 at 10 years old is now 22 years old.
Holy shit.
Yeah, no, right. First of all, let's feel old for a second. But also, imagine, though, that kind of audience. Because the audience that they were looking for at the time is not what would exist right now.
Oh, no.
You know what I'm saying? And I think this movie would do particularly a lot better released in a post-MCU world than it would at the time. At 2010, it came out the same year as Iron Man 2. So the MCU is basically not established at the time.
No, it was
just
we
Iron
had
Man.
Iron Man come out and people were like, this is great.
Hulk.
Incredible Hulk came out, people were like, this was better than the last Hulk.
Exactly. And it wasn't a connected universe yet.
Sort of was, but like people weren't really expecting too much yet.
Only the nerds knew that it was a connected universe. Most people wouldn't have known that, right?
This was also before people stayed till the end of the credits.
Exactly. So I think this was a great idea. But had this come out today instead of 10 years ago, I think it would do a lot better.
And even then, though, like for the time, it still did great.
We'll talk more about this next week about Kick-Ass 2 and why that didn't do so well.
And why
but I think
that series never continued.
Right. I don't think it's out of the question to do a Kick-Ass 3. I think now, especially, is kind of the time to do a deconstruction on a comic book property.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I unfortunately don't think it's going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen.
And we're going to talk about it next week, but there's a lot of things behind the scenes.
There's a lot of things that happen, right. Sure. The other thing I think this movie does really well, there's a lot of like father-son stuff. I don't know if you noticed.
Oh yeah, between Kick-Ass and his dad, because his dad was all he had.
So there's 3 to 4, depending on how you want to slice it, examples of like a father-child relationship in this movie. And I don't think it's obviously not by coincidence. So there's Kick-Ass. Right, yeah, it's a theme. There's Kick-Ass and his dad. At the beginning of the movie, he explains how, like, ever since his mom died, not much else changed. And they show that because Kick-Ass's Dave is sitting at, like, this like breakfast table with his mom and dad. His mom has an aneurysm. And then they transition into a scene several months later that's exactly the same.
Yep.
Right? The only difference is that the mom isn't there.
Yeah, because it's just me and my dad, life goes on.
Yeah, because his dad's like not super involved, right? There's them. There's McLovin and Frank D'Amico, Mark Strong.
I love how we keep calling him McLovin.
There's like what the fuck else we're gonna call him? Like Christopher Mintz
Plaze.
No, it's McLovin.
How do you pronounce his name?
If I say McLovin, everybody knows who I'm talking about.
I hope so. Well,
so it's McLovin.
Or we're just gonna sound really fucking old and no one's gonna get it.
Seriously, McLovin and his dad, Mark Strong. And then there's Mindy and her dad, right?
Yeah.
And I said 3 to 4 because you can also kind of consider Mindy and Marcus.
Because you can tell just from this movie that he does care about her a lot.
Yeah. So they explain in what we were talking about in the comic book and that animation that Marcus had custody of Mindy, Hit Girl, for her first 5 years, and then Big Daddy gets out of jail, gets custody of Mindy obviously dies at the end of the movie, and then Marcus resumes custody. Right?
Of Mindy, yeah.
And so I think the movie goes out of its way to kind of examine these parental influences on these kids at like critical points in their lives, right? In their upbringings. And I had to think a lot about this because it's not very like overt. It's pretty subtle in like what it's trying to say, I think. But I think it's trying to like kind of compare like the involvement in the parenting skills of like all these different dads, right? Because in all these situations, the mom is not there.
That's very true.
The mom is dead, or in McLovin's case, the mom is just like not involved at all.
She's there, but not really.
But not there, right? The whole point is to kind of compare these different father figures and like how they affect the end result of like their children. Kid. Exactly. So like in Kick-Ass's case, the dad is like not involved at all.
He's
like,
just kind of like
he's there,
like
but
he's there. You can tell he cares. He doesn't really.
Yeah, like he cares, but also like Kick-Ass says after the mom dies, not much changed.
No, like
so. What is the dad?
Their
really
life just
doing?
kind of stayed the same. It seems like the dad just like goes to work.
Right.
It seems like he kind of works late because there's a few times where he like dropped in on him. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to work tonight."
Honestly, I only noticed 2 scenes with the dad, and it's that first one that we said where like the mom died or whatever, and they're sitting at the breakfast table, and then later when he gets first attacked or whatever, he asks the paramedics not to tell his dad that that he's like,
wearing a superhero costume.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So his dad assumes what the official report says is that he was found naked. And his dad asks him very uncomfortably, like, were you raped, basically?
Yeah.
But I don't know about you, what I got from that scene is that the dad isn't very much concerned about him so much as he's kind of embarrassed that, like, his son might have gotten raped.
He's like, you weren't. And then he's like, oh my God, no.
Right. Like, he's very uncomfortable in the way he says it, and maybe I'm reading too much into it.
It could
also
just be, like, just an awkward conversation, too.
Okay, but like movies are an art, and the artist chooses what to put into it.
That's true.
The director chooses what
like
conversations
how somebody
put
says
into
something
the movie.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I feel like the point of that is to show like, does a dad really care if his son was raped, or is he kind of embarrassed at the thought that maybe his son was raped?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's the only other interaction we get.
Yeah. There's not too much. Like, he just kind of seemed like a basic dad that just works too much, it seems like. Yeah.
And I feel like what they're doing is that they're saying, hey, here's a dad who's not involved at all. Maybe doesn't care that hands-on. Maybe his intentions are really good, but he's not super hands-on with his son. And look what happened. Like, his son, like, resorted to, like, crime fighting and being a vigilante, you know what I'm saying?
Becoming a psycho.
Right. Meanwhile, we get Mindy and Nick Cage, Hit Girl and Big Daddy. And Big Daddy is, what's the word I'm looking for?
Brainwashing his child?
Yeah, he's basically brainwashing Mindy into doing his own.
And Marcus even kind of says as much directly to him.
Marcus, being the only regular parent in this movie, is like, what does he say to him?
You owe that kid a childhood.
Right. Because it's fair that an adult like Nick Cage's character, Big Daddy, is obsessed with getting Frank D'Amico.
Right.
Because
he's justified in
him
wanting to do that.
Yeah, and he's looking for vengeance because he's a Batman.
Is turning your child into a tool for that vengeance.
Exactly. Because the child doesn't require the same vengeance as you do.
The child is innocent in this.
The child is innocent, exactly. But he kind of brainwashes her into being like this like killing machine, right? So what are the ethics of that? You know what I'm saying? Like here's here's a parent who's overly involved and is incredibly caring, but for all the wrong reasons. And then you compare that to McLovin in The Bad Guy.
Who doesn't seem to really want anything to do with this kid. He
who
doesn't really
evil.
Take him seriously.
Yeah, he's evil and is kind of in the middle of like being involved. He allows McLovin to kind of become. He eventually
humors him. He humors
and
his
he cares
son.
about him.
And
However, he is
him.
evil, but he does turn his son into the supervillain of the next movie.
Yeah,
I imagine. So I think there's a lot going on here about like this father-son relationship. Kick-Ass's dad, especially, like, being a non-involved parent is just as bad as, like, being a bad parent.
Yeah.
Because you may love your son, but if you're not involved, how is that different than being a bad parent who's not involved because he hates his son? You know what I'm saying? And, like, what does that do to, like, your kid? Meanwhile, like, what does it do to your kid if you're Big Daddy? Nicolas Cage.
Or you're over-involved.
You're over-involved for all the wrong reasons, and you're turning your kid into, like, a psychopath.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I think it's super subtle because there's no, like, answer. The movie's not clear.
No, there's no correct answer.
Yeah, exactly. I think what it's pushing is, like, be smart, you know, like be smart in how you raise your kid.
Because you do have influence over them,
Obviously,
whether
like,
you know it or
yeah,
not.
because all three of these situations, like all three kids are heavily influenced by their father's either like involvement or lack of involvement in their lives.
And I would argue that none of them are in a good place psychologically.
No, the only normal father figure is Marcus.
Yep.
He's the only one who's like, this is wrong. And
he kind of got boxed out of Mindy's life a little bit.
Right, because they're like hetero co-dads. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which I thought was super cool. Like, these are two, like, friends that, like, kind of, like,
best
raised
friends, yeah.
this girl together or whatever.
But, like, obviously, like, Big Daddy kind of took over with that.
And what I was saying earlier about, like, the realism, that kind of, like, broke the movie for me. I love this movie. I thought it was so much fun to watch again. But I would have rather it live in a more realistic kind of universe.
Okay.
Because that's the premise of the movie, right? It's superheroes in real life.
So you'd say the flaws are when it started getting a bit fantastic.
Yeah. I thought that's fine for,
I'd
like,
agree with that. That's a fair...
Yeah, I think that's fair for, like, or that's good for, like, Wanted and for Kingsman, you know? But maybe this should have been more grounded in order to kind of push that theme forward. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally understand.
But that's, honestly, it's a nitpick, because the movie's a lot of fun. The action, the music, the way it's shot, I think it does really, really well. And it's such a good representation of, like, what a comic book movie should be, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Like, it did a really good job adapting this comic, too.
Yeah.
By the way, this comic was originally a Marvel published comic.
Oh, was it really? I don't know that.
Indirectly, it was under, like, another one of Marvel's imprints, but it was originally a Marvel
nice.
comic before it got moved over to, I want to say Image, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. So, moving on to Keep or Cancel, I don't even know who to talk about, because we've talked about Nicolas Cage a lot already. I don't want to even touch that anymore. Do we go Aaron Taylor Johnson? Do we go Chloe Grace Moretz? Do we go Mark Strong? Do we go Mark Millar? Matthew Vaughn? I didn't even write anything down for this, because I'm like...
Well, here's the thing,
know.
though. I don't think there's anybody in this movie that I would cancel, honestly.
Again, small budget, small names, too.
Yeah, none of these people were big names at the time.
Yeah.
The biggest name was probably...
Nick Cage, by far.
Nick Cage and McLovin.
It's crazy that, this is a time when McLovin is probably more famous than Chloe Grace Moretz and Mark Strong.
Yeah. I think this is the first thing I've seen Mark Strong in that I can remember, at least.
He's in Lock, Stock, 3 Smoking Barrels, I think.
He was in Shazam.
Yeah, no, I know that.
He was in Sherlock Holmes a year earlier. I'm, like, Googling all this now. Oh!
Stardust, obviously.
He was in Stardust with Matthew Vaughn directing.
I'm sorry, he was not in Lock, Stock, 3 Smoking Barrels.
I'd say this is the first role that...
Sunshine. Have you seen Sunshine? That movie is fantastic.
I've not.
He's in that. So this would have been the first role that we would have noticed him in, probably.
Yeah, because everything else I'm seeing was, like, after Kick-Ass.
Yeah.
He was great in Kingsman.
Oh, he's fantastic
Mark
in
Strong's
that.
fantastic.
I really like him.
He was even good in Green Lantern. Like, the
He's
issues with the
not-
movie was not him.
Not the worst part of Green Lantern, you're
No,
right.
not at all.
Chloe Grace Moretz, I haven't seen her in a lot else. I know she's acting a lot now, but
I remember seeing her in some vampire movie.
she seems to be a very good actress all around.
This
I love
kinda
her in this
kickstarted her
movie.
career.
No, it kickstarts her career. I love her in this movie.
This like the cutest interview with her where she's like...
She's basically like, if I said any of the words in this movie, I'd be granted for a week.
Yep, and she wasn't allowed to see the movie
She
either.
wasn't allowed to see the movie. She was like, no, like, I'm a normal kid. Like,
She knows that the words that she was saying was
Yeah.
bad. It was
I mean, she says
honestly
cunt
adorable.
in this movie like
Yes.
3 times.
Yes.
I think she says fuck a couple times.
Yeah.
Like, she's fantastic, though.
She's a great actress.
She steals the show in every fucking scene in this movie. I'm actually super excited to watch Kick-Ass 2 because I haven't seen it before.
As for keep or cancel, I can't even think of anybody I would even consider canceling for this.
So Aaron Taylor Johnson, he seems to be like a fine actor. I saw him in Godzilla, obviously in Avengers. Haven't seen him much else. He's fine, so cool.
He's fine.
McLovin is
No
fine.
issue with him. McLovin's
Mark Strong is
fine.
fantastic. We're keeping him. I already said I'm canceling Nick Cage.
And I've already said in the past that I would keep Nick Cage, so I guess that's where we're standing with that.
That's where we stand.
It's always down to Nick Cage.
Hopefully not anymore. I'm sick of this debate. So, Into the Phantom Zone or not?
Oh, absolutely not. This movie's a joy.
Easy question. This movie is so much fun. Definitely watch it. not in the Phantom Zone at all.
This
I
is
want to
pro-
watch this movie over and
This
over
is
again.
one of the few movies where we will say, like, watch this one.
Oh, yeah. And I'm upset with myself that I've never seen this movie again after I saw it in theaters, literally 10 years ago. I definitely want to watch this movie every couple years. It's one of those where it earns its rewatches, you know?
Yeah.
This is a good property. It's a good film. We're not chucking it into the Phantom Zone. Next week, what movie are we doing?
Kick-Ass 2?
Obviously, the sequel.
Yeah.
We do franchises all in together, so next week we're doing Kick-Ass 2. Again, it is also not streaming anywhere. You would have to rent it if you want to watch it, but we recommend renting a movie every now and then. If you can't find it anywhere else on a streaming platform, rent it. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and we're not being paid to say this or anything. Just
It's not a
do
lot
it.
of money. Just fucking check out the $3, man. It's not. Just watch the movie. Rent it. Hey, thanks for listening. Thanks for that piano dude for our musical intro. Make sure you check us out on Instagram. We're on Instagram at Films from the Phantom Zone with underscores for spaces. We're on Twitter at Films from PZ.
Hot takes.
Definitely a lot of hot takes. Make sure you leave a rating and a review. You can go on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, leave a review. It helps the bots. Keeps us relevant to other people.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Relevant, that's the right word.
Yeah, seriously.
We don't get paid for this yet or anything.
Not
so.
at all. So anything helps. Tell a friend, please. You can argue with us on any of those platforms. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. You got anything else you want to add?
Not really.
About
No.
this? You want people to talk to you?
Maybe not directly. Yeah.
Yeah, just use our
Use
Instagram
our
and Twitter.
actual.
Don't find our
No, unless I know you.
right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So otherwise, we'll see you next week. Bye.
See ya.